Welcome back. Welcome back. This is Professor Roundtree here for Marketing 3401, Basic Marketing Management. And we want to talk about Chapter 3, Analyzing the Market Environment. Now, we're going to do this in two separate videos, Part 1 and Part 2. The first one will be the microenvironment, this one here. And then Part 2 will detail some of the issues related to the macro environment. So we'll take them one at a time. But as an overall description, what do we mean by the marketing environment? Actors and forces outside marketing affect marketing management's ability to build and maintain successful relationships with customers. Essentially, all that really means is that all the things that happen, some of them are controllable, some of them are uncontrollable. The macro environmental stuff that we'll talk about in Part 2, things related to social cultural trends, economic trends, technology trends, those are the things that not any company has control over. So those are your uncontrollables. On your controllable side, in terms of these market environmental issues, are the things that go on internal to your organization. And we're going to take those one at a time. So just to kind of overview here, we're going to talk about the company and how that has an impact. Again, these are all internal things. Suppliers, again, the effect is internal. Now, of course, suppliers, intermediaries, competitors, publics, and customers, those are all external to us, but it's really trying to assess what's going on as those things help or enable or hinder us in providing services and selling products to our customers. So we're going to actually take these one at a time. Generally, when we think about a company, and many companies, every company has strengths and weaknesses. Remember, this environmental analysis that we're going to do, it's called environmental scanning generally. This is the thing that every company does to determine how to assess their strengths and weaknesses. And on the macro side, we're looking at opportunities and threats that are created by all that's going on externally. So internally, every company has some good and some bad. And so the question is, what are some of the categories that we could look at? The main point I want you to take from this, though, is it's really about how well all these areas work together. Some companies are a well-oiled machine. Some companies are very overly political, and it makes it very difficult for cross-departmental interaction to occur in an effective kind of way. So here it could be the management of the company, it could be the finance department, the R&D department, purchasing, operations, accounting. You can talk about marketing, you can talk about human resources. There are lots of different departments generally in companies that will help determine how well a company is organized and how well it works. Generally speaking, it comes from the top. You hire a really good CEO who has a really good relationship with those who run divisions, and they kind of filter down their relationships with individual division managers or department managers. So at the end of the day, it's really about trying to see how you make these different areas a cohesive working unit. Zappos is a great company that does a really good job. Obviously, a relatively small company. It's not a 20, 30, 40, 50,000 employee company, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But they have I think the right approach at a relatively small level, a couple of thousand employees, to really make it a company that sort of embraces customer service as the focal point. And they find a way to make it work across departments. And I think that's the issue. The companies that are dysfunctional are the ones where, for example, finance doesn't talk to accounting. If you're creating a new product, people who are working in operations, people who are working in research and development, they all have to come together to figure out what they're going to build. Can they physically build a new product designed by research and development? Do they have the facilities? If they don't have the facilities, can they get the financing to build the facilities? Once they build the facilities and they build the product, is marketing on board? Do they have the legal people also on board to figure out what the intellectual properties or legal issues are involved in trying to build a brand? Suppliers will always be important. Some companies are vertically integrated, meaning that they own different component parts of the value chain, the supply chain. Many will outsource production. They will outsource logistics. So it really kind of depends on the company. I guess the important point here is that every company should make sure that they have a variety of suppliers of goods and services that help them build their products and services that will satisfy their customers' needs. So you don't want to have all of your raw material. If you're a car company, you don't want to buy all your rubber from one company. You want to have multiple companies that you buy it from. But also, too, you want to make sure that, each of those companies that you partner with, in essence, your suppliers, are well vetted. And so you have to find someone who is not only reliable and gives you, really good prices, but also too responsive to increases in demand. And that could be as a result of market activity. There may be some problems when it comes to the actual end product and product defects that have nothing to do with rubber, but they may have a recall on other component parts, which means that then you have to get companies who sell you the rubber maybe to extend additional supply to you. So you have to think about retrofitting and rebuilding certain types of components of your product. Intermediaries generally, I mean, these are organizations generally that help you to distribute the final product, and they could be retailers. And that's probably the most common category for them. In the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about different examples of marketing intermediaries. So in essence, what we want to do is really try to figure out how can we enable external people to help us connect with the consumer. The final leg of selling a product, which is the stores that we go into, the online stores that we log on to, those may be the people who will help us to deliver that product or service to our customer. So we're going to take these in 4 different categories: resellers, people also the people who help us in physical distribution, the marketing service agencies, and also to what we call financial intermediaries. Generally speaking, let's just take them one at a time. Resellers, generally the ones that we're most familiar with. Those are going to be your Walmarts, your QVCs, vending machines, whatever means you use to get the product physically into the hands of the consumers. The physical distribution firms, those are the ones who help us or enable us to physically deliver the product. And these are hauling companies, the ones who will do the transport cross-country. They're going to be, and this is really, really important in terms of, products that are more perishable. Anybody who sells fresh produce, fruits and vegetables, flowers, anything that you can think of that has some sort of shelf life that's relatively short. So perishable items. It's going to be really important that we have those kinds of companies who partner with us. And again, just like we had said earlier, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So you'll have multiple firms who will haul your fresh produce, oranges grown in Florida, to different parts of the country, or pineapples that come from Hawaii or some other place. You're going to make sure that you have a logistics company that has air freight that will allow you to keep them cool and cold so they can get to United States mainland in a fresh manner. Marketing service agencies, companies like ad agencies generally, Ogilvy and Mather, Gray Advertising, Saatchi & Saatchi, some of the others, those are the ones who are going to take care of the outsourcing of what I would call essential services for marketing. Some companies even, look at it in terms of not just advertising, but also promotion as well. So they might have companies doing their promotion in a particular context. So, for example, there are several agencies that are really good at doing promotions when they try to connect with undergraduate college students specifically. That's their expertise. And so if you have a product that you're trying to target toward the college segment, you go to a company like that. And lastly, financial intermediaries. These are going to be the companies, your banks, your Wall Street firms. Anytime you need to raise capital, for example, to build that plant where you realize that you don't have the physical capacity to expand into a new segment of the marketplace for an existing product, you just can't ramp up and make 25, 30, 40% more of whatever you sell. And so you need to build a new plant or retrofit a plant to create a product that's slightly different to position you a little bit better with your existing customers. So these banks will help and enable you to actually generate the resources to do so. Competitors. I think I've said this in class many, many times. Who, asked the question, who are your competitors? Who determines your competitors? It's always going to be your customers. Whoever your customer sees as an organization where they can buy a product and or service to satisfy an existing unmet need, providing them those benefits, that's going to be your competitor. And so as a marketer or a brand manager, you have to be very wide open and broad-minded about who you compete with. And so if you're losing money to an organization you don't believe is your direct competitor, the example I always give is Pepsi and Coke always saw one another as competitors. And then it wasn't until they figured out that many people were buying bottled water in lieu of buying Pepsi and Coke that they believed that companies like Dasani and Aquafina were truly competitors. And that's one of the reasons why they decided to buy them. Coke buying Dasani and Aquafina being purchased by Pepsi. Also, too, when we think about this generally in terms of micro environment, it could be any company who has any kind of impact or interest in an organization's abilities and objectives. And here I'm going to list a litany of them. Financial publics, we just call them publics in general. Financial publics typically would be companies who, for example, manage money for 401ks and they're investing in the stock of Procter & Gamble, or they're investing in the stock of Walmart. They have a vested interest in a company doing well. And so that's what we think about when we talk about financial publics, people who have a vested interest in actually seeing a company do well. Media, anybody who covers products, product safety, branding information, companies who look at products like Tide and some of the others to sponsor their broadcasting of events, be it a sporting event, it could be a weekly television program. They have a vested interest in an organization doing well. So you have to really kind of keep an eye out on that. Government publics, you have to understand what's going on in not only in terms of federal government, but also local government and state government, looking at constituents, looking at the changes in the laws that might be occurring in the state where you do business. Financial services companies as brands, they have to keep a very sharp eye on what the local laws are saying about doing business as far as issuing credit cards, opening bank accounts, extending mortgages, and so on. There are lots of different rules and regulations at all different levels, from the state level all the way up to the federal government level. Certain citizen action groups, people who are concerned about products and product safety, especially when it comes to children, they have a vested interest in what's actually going on and executing the marketing strategy for an organization. Same thing for local publics and general publics, people at large, people like you and me who have an interest in what's actually going on in companies, for example, like British Petroleum or BP or Exxon, what's going on when they have oil spills. I mean, we're all concerned about that. Even if we don't live in the Gulf region, we're concerned about how it might have an impact or an effect on an environment. How are automobile companies adhering to standards as it relates to safety, or standards as it relates to the environmental issue as far as how the emissions have an impact on our physical environment, air quality, and pollution, and things of that nature. And lastly, internal publics. I mean, these are going to be people who are internal to an organization. So obviously it's the employees, but in many companies where they're unionized, it's the union public that has an impact. It has an impact on the cost structure for a company. And so you really have to, a lot of times, get buy-in depending on how you're structured. But at a bare minimum, you really have to make sure that you are in tune with what the needs are for your organizational members internally. And so with that said, we're going to focus on, in the next section, part 2 of this video, we're going to focus on the actual macro environment. And so without any further ado, we're going to switch to macro.